Today, you will discover the story of Mónica and Tomás, two souls separated by pain who face a unique spectacle, fireworks that reveal dreams and hidden truths. Will they confront what the sky shows them, or will they fall into the abyss of their secrets? Their destiny is about to explode. The first time Mónica saw Tomás after 2 years, she found him standing in the supermarket, holding a pack of cookies they used to share. His gaze was distant, as if the weight of an unbreakable past had chained him to that moment. She quickly turned into another aisle, her heart racing, unsure if it was from the excitement of seeing him or the pain of remembering what they had lost. Mónica lives in a small apartment filled with half-finished canvases. The walls, splashed with intense colors and fragmented figures, reflect an inner chaos she tries to organize with every brushstroke. Her job as an art teacher at the local school keeps her busy, but her mind always drifts back to that fateful winter. One night, standing before her easel, she unintentionally paints a broken carousel, surrounded by shadows resembling a familiar face. Tomás's. Tomás, on the other hand, has turned his life into a mechanical routine. He wakes up early, immerses himself in ship designs at the shipyard, and returns to an empty home. The remnants of his life with Mónica are hidden in a box at the back of his closet, but every now and then, his fingers brush against the red scarf she used to wear, and the echo of her laughter seems to fill the room. He hasn't seen her since they signed the separation papers, until that unexpected encounter at the supermarket. He said nothing, but the image of Mónica awkwardly moving between the aisles haunted him for days. In this small town, New Year's fireworks are more than just a spectacle. They are a tradition that connects people with their deepest dreams. This year, however, both hesitate to attend. For Mónica, it represents a reminder of the last time they were together on that date, when the sky's lights reflected their love. For Tomás, it symbolizes a broken promise, something he dreads facing. Both are trapped in their separate worlds, but the impending event and the unmistakable pull of their shared past begin weaving invisible threads that draw them closer, though neither knows it yet. The December air, filled with salt and wood smoke, enveloped the streets of the small town as preparations for New Year's reached their climax. Colorful lights adorned every corner, but what truly drew people in was the fireworks display. These weren't ordinary fireworks. When they exploded, their bursts transformed into vivid images, dreams materializing in the night sky. For many, it was a moment of hope, a promise that their desires could become reality. Mónica watched from her apartment window as families gathered in the central square, their laughter drifting up to her sanctuary. She had avoided the display since their separation. She didn't want to see what the fireworks might reveal, fearing that her own dreams would betray her by showing her what she longed for, but knew she could never regain. However, that night, as she turned off the light in her studio, something inside her broke. She couldn't keep running away. She put on her coat and stepped out, guided by a mix of nostalgia and defiance. Miles away, Tomás was finishing his shift at the shipyard. Passing by a shop, he noticed a poster announcing that night's event. He knew he had no reason to go, but the memory of his first New Year's with Mónica came to mind. They had laughed together under that illuminated sky, making plans for a future that never came to be. Driven by a force he couldn't understand, he headed to the square, blending into the crowd. The square was packed, full of eager and expectant faces. The lights dimmed and the first explosion filled the sky. Shapes began to emerge. A child on a swing, a field of sunflowers, a pair of intertwined hands. The dreams of others unfolded brilliantly, drawing applause and sighs. Hidden in the shadows, Mónica felt her heart race as she waited for the sky to speak. Tomás, standing on the other side of the square, could barely breathe. Neither knew the other was there, just a few meters apart. But something peculiar happened when the next burst lit up the sky. Two figures appeared, vaguely familiar even to themselves. A couple, surrounded by golden light, holding a small lantern in their hands, their faces filled with hope. The image vanished as quickly as it appeared, leaving both of them with a sense of unease and wonder. Although they hadn't seen each other, they both understood that the fireworks didn't just display dreams. They revealed truths they couldn't ignore. The show continued, and the sky filled with figures and colors that seemed to dance to the murmurs of the crowd. Amid the magic, a group of volunteers began handing out glowing balloons, crystalline objects that seemed to encapsulate a fragment of the starry sky itself. Monica accepted one reluctantly. She held it in her hands, mesmerized by its glow. A faint vibration ran through her fingers, and suddenly, images began to form inside the balloon. She immediately recognized the scene. A cold night on a snow-covered hill, Tomás kneeling before her, holding a ring. She could hear his words, as vivid as they were then. "I don't have everything figured out, but I know I want to figure it out with you." A silent tear rolled down her cheek as the balloon dissolved into the air, leaving behind a golden trail. Across the square, Tomás received his own balloon, barely paying attention. But when he looked at it, the lights inside swirled to form a memory buried deep in his mind. Monica, walking into the cafe where he first saw her. She wore a yellow dress and carried a book under her arm, her smile lighting up the place more than the sunlight streaming through the windows. His heart skipped a beat, as if reliving that moment. Like Monica's, his balloon dissipated, leaving only a trace of melancholy. Both stood still, lost in their thoughts, when an old man with a white beard and twinkling eyes appeared beside them, as if he had emerged from thin air. To Monica, the man had a reassuring presence. To Tomás, he felt slightly unsettling. "The sky holds its magic," he said, his voice deep but gentle. "But what you've seen doesn't come from there. The fireworks only show what's already inside you. The rest is up to you." Before they could ask who he was or how he knew so much, the old man vanished into the crowd. Both, still unaware of the other's presence, were left with the same feeling. What they had seen was no coincidence, and perhaps this night would be more significant than they had imagined. The sky transformed into a living canvas, where explosions of light and color gave way to figures and dreamlike landscapes that seemed to breathe in the air. The murmurs of the crowd mingled with the flashes, each spectator captivated by the magic of the dreams emerging among the stars. Monica felt her heart race as she saw an image painfully familiar to her. A small studio filled with light, where she was painting beside a man whose silhouette she recognized immediately. It was Tomás. In the projection, her hands worked on a canvas while he, smiling, held a brush for her. The scene exuded a quiet happiness, a moment of closeness that felt so near yet so far away. Tomás, on the other side of the square, watched in disbelief at a similar vision. Himself and Monica, sitting at a small table, sharing a cup of coffee while soft laughter filled the space. But behind that idyllic image, others appeared. Heated arguments, stifled tears, a door closing. The colors in the sky seemed to darken, showing that the path to that happiness would not be simple. Both stood motionless, unable to look away from the projections. The images, alternating between moments of peace and turmoil, seemed to whisper a truth they both feared to face. To reach that future together, they would have to unearth secrets, confront their fears, and heal the wounds that had kept them apart. As the figures in the sky faded, their hearts felt heavy with a mix of hope and doubt. Neither was sure they were ready for what those images seemed to ask of them. But deep down, both knew that something had changed, as if the universe had shown them a path that, though uncertain, they could no longer ignore. The days following the spectacle left a sense of unease in the air, as if the world moved differently, adjusting to an unfamiliar rhythm. One night, while reorganizing her studio, Monica discovered an envelope buried among old notebooks. It was a letter she had written to Thomas years ago, shortly after their separation, but had never dared to send. The words, worn by time, still carried deep emotion, confessions of love, regret, and a longing for a second chance. Sitting before her easel, Monica read the letter over and over, wondering if now was the right time to deliver it. But doubts overwhelmed her. What if he had already moved on? What if reopening that chapter only brought more pain? Nevertheless, she placed the envelope in her bag, as if, deep down, she knew she couldn't ignore it. In another part of the city, Tomás was searching for tools in his bedroom closet when his fingers brushed against a forgotten box. Opening it, he found a collection of sketches Monica had made during the early years of their relationship. Each drawing was steeped in shared moments: a park where they used to walk, the cafe where they met, even a caricature of him with his crooked smile. The memories hit him hard, stirring feelings he had tried to bury. He put the box away but couldn't help looking at the sketches each night before going to sleep. Spurred by these small signs from the past, both decided to take a step toward each other. Monica began drafting a message for Tomás, but every time she wrote something, she erased it, trapped between hope and fear. Tomás, for his part, walked past the building where she lived several times, thinking of going up and knocking on her door but always finding an excuse not to. When they finally crossed paths at a small market, Monica carried the letter in her bag, and Tomás had one of the sketches in his pocket. They saw each other from a distance and exchanged a look that seemed to echo what they had seen in the fireworks. But instead of approaching, something in the atmosphere grew heavier. A mother tripped with her cart, a child began crying, and they were both caught in the chaos. By the time calm returned, they were no longer in sight of each other. Every attempt to reconnect seemed blocked by the world, as if the universe was testing them. Both felt as though something greater was pushing them to confront their deepest fears. But they also wondered if the effort was worth it. Still, a flicker of hope persisted within them. Perhaps the next step would be the decisive one. The city began to buzz with rumors as the new year approached. People whispered in cafes, on street corners, even in the classrooms where Monica worked. According to the talk, the fireworks projections were not merely images. They were intrinsically tied to the state of the hearts of those who watched them. If people carried unresolved pain, resentment, or sorrow, the fireworks would reflect it in the form of nightmares. Monica heard this from a colleague who spoke enthusiastically about the spiritual connection of the fireworks. They say that if discord persists between people, the sky will show darkness, not light, the woman remarked, unaware of how her words affected Monica. That night, back in her apartment, Monica pulled out the letter she had never delivered. The paper, now slightly wrinkled from her constant hesitation, felt heavier than ever in her hands. Tomás, meanwhile, heard something similar during a casual conversation with his co-workers. "The lights won't shine if there's no harmony," one of them said while adjusting a piece of machinery at the shipyard. Although he tried to brush it off, those words haunted him for days. What if the projections revealed his own emptiness? What if the chaos he felt inside affected the rest of the city? Both began reflecting on their connection to the fireworks. The dreams they had seen projected the previous year weren't just beautiful. They were also a reminder of what they had lost. The possibility that those magical bursts could turn into reflections of their own fears filled them with an anxiety they couldn't ignore. The news spread like wildfire, and soon everyone was talking about the importance of reconciliation before the spectacle. Deep down, Monica and Tomás knew the message wasn't just for them, but every word resonated in their hearts like a bell tolling. If they didn't act now, the fireworks could become a cruel mirror of their own scars. As the weeks flew by, both felt the urge to act. Monica began painting feverishly, trying to capture what she had seen during the previous spectacle. the happy versions of themselves. Tomás, on the other hand, found solace in revisiting the sketches he had kept, as if searching through memories could offer him an answer. Yet every step toward action seemed to bring more doubt. The weight of what the fireworks might reveal grew heavier with each passing day. What if their hearts couldn't align? What if the time for healing had already passed? Anxiety surrounded them, but both knew that the upcoming new year wouldn't be like the others. There was too much at stake, for them and for the city. New Year's Eve arrived, its air charged with tension, as if the universe itself were holding its breath. After days of wavering between fear and hope, Mónica finally picked up the phone and dialed Tomás's number. She had no clear plan, but she felt she had to try, even if only to ease the weight in her chest. Tomás answered on the second ring, his deep voice tinged with surprise and caution. "Hello, Mónica." The initial words were hesitant, laden with a politeness that only highlighted the distance between them. But soon, unresolved issues surfaced like a storm. "Why didn't you try to stop me when I left?" Mónica asked, her voice trembling. "How could you let everything fall apart so easily?" Caught between remorse and pride, Tomás responded defensively. "What was I supposed to do? I tried to reach out, but you had already decided it wasn't worth trying." What began as a conversation filled with intention quickly turned into a battle of reproaches. Each word was a dart that opened old wounds, each silence a pause heavy with resentment. They spoke of what they had lost, of broken promises, and of the times when each felt the other hadn't been there when they were needed most. "I was always the one trying to save us," Mónica said, her voice breaking. "And what did I get in return? Indifference. Silence." "That's not fair," Tomás replied, his voice barely containing his intensity. "Do you think I didn't suffer? That it didn't hurt me as much as it hurt you? But you never let me in, Mónica. You always shut the door." The argument escalated until Mónica, feeling like she couldn't take it anymore, let out a strangled sigh. "I can't keep doing this. I'm not going tomorrow. I don't want to see what the fireworks have to show me. I've already seen enough." Before Tomás could respond, the line went dead. He stood there with the phone in his hand, feeling guilt and frustration intertwine into a knot in his chest. He thought of everything he wanted to say to her, but the words seemed trapped in his throat. That night, Mónica sat in front of her easel, her hands trembling too much to hold a brush. The letter she had written remained in her bag, now feeling like a futile symbol of a hope that no longer existed. Tomás, for his part, wandered aimlessly through the empty streets of the city. The night's cold bit at his skin, but he barely noticed. He stopped in front of a travel agency with a sign advertising last-minute flights. For a moment, he considered leaving, abandoning everything, and starting anew somewhere else. Both stood at the edge of an abyss, believing there was no way back this time. The magic of the fireworks, which had always promised hope, now seemed like something that would only confront them with a failure neither of them was willing to face. That night, while the city slept under a blanket of silence interrupted only by the whisper of the wind, Mónica and Tomás, separated by miles of emotional distance, fell into a dream that seemed to come from a place beyond time. Mónica dreamed of an expansive field, illuminated by a night sky filled with stars so bright they seemed within reach. In the center of the field, a campfire burned gently, casting flickering warmth that caressed her face. Standing before her was Tomás, younger, with the carefree smile she had loved so much. He laughed as he extended his hand, inviting her to dance. Without hesitation, she accepted. The sound of their laughter filled the air, an echo of simpler, happier times. Tomás had the same dream. In his vision, he saw Mónica in the yellow dress he had always associated with the early days of their relationship. Her hair shimmered under the starlight, and her laughter, clear and light, enveloped him. As they danced. The feeling of joy was so intense that, for a moment, he forgot all the pain and distance that separated them. It was as if the world had perfectly aligned, and nothing else mattered. At one point in the dream, they both stopped, staring deeply into each other's eyes. A wiser, calmer version of themselves seemed to speak through their gaze, a silent promise that everything could heal if only they dared to try. When Monica woke, dawn was filtering through the curtains. She remained in bed, her heart racing and her eyes wet with tears she hadn't realized she'd shed. The dream had left her with unexpected clarity, a certainty that not everything was lost. Tomás, sitting on the edge of his bed, felt something similar. The weight of the previous night seemed to have lifted. The images from the dream remained vivid in his mind, a reminder of what could still be. Without planning it, both looked at the clock. The day of the spectacle was only a few hours away, and for the first time in a long time, they felt a renewed desire to fight, not just for what they once shared, but for what could still exist. They both understood that perhaps the dream was not merely a message from their hearts, but a treasure, a guide to finding their way back to each other. The bustling of the central plaza echoed through the crisp air of the year's final night. Families settled on the grass, friends shared laughter, and children ran with glowing balloons. Among the crowd, Monica arrived first, wrapped in a coat that seemed too large for her. She stayed on the sidelines near a tree, watching the lights and movement, her heart pounding. Tomás arrived shortly after, his tall, familiar figure standing out among the people. His eyes instinctively scanned the crowd, and though he hadn't expected to see her, there she was. He stood frozen for a moment, as if the sight of Monica had stilled everything else around him. The sky darkened further, and the first explosion of fireworks marked the beginning of the spectacle. Both turned their gazes upward, captivated by the bursts that began to take shape. Figures of color danced across the sky, creating scenes of dreams and desires that seemed almost tangible. Suddenly, something different appeared among the projections. A warm home with soft light spilling from its windows. Inside were two figures, a woman painting by a window and a man working on something at a nearby table. Laughter filled the air, and a small child ran between them, his energy lighting the scene like another firework. Monica brought a hand to her mouth, her heart tightening in her chest. Tomás, from his spot, felt a lump in his throat as he watched the image. The child they never had, the one they had dreamed of together but life had taken from them, now lived in that projection, a representation of everything they could still be. The projections continued, showing moments of joy, challenges overcome, and finally, two elderly figures sitting on a bench, holding hands beneath a blooming tree. Monica turned her head, searching for Tomás, and found him looking at her from across the plaza. Their eyes met, and in that instant, no words were necessary. He began walking toward her, his steps slow but determined. She remained still, her heart hammering nervously. When they stood face to face, neither knew what to say at first. Tomás was the one to break the silence. "Did you see what I saw?" he asked, his voice soft but heavy with emotion. Monica nodded, fighting back tears. "It's what I've always wanted, what I still want." A timid smile appeared on both their lips, and at that moment, something in the air shifted. The fireworks continued bursting above them, but now they seemed brighter, more alive. As the crowd applauded and celebrated, Monica and Tomás, for the first time in years, shared a laugh. And with that small step, the path toward what they had seen in the sky began to take shape. The plaza began to empty as the last lights of the spectacle faded into the sky. Monica and Tomás remained together in silence, watching the dispersing crowd unhurried, as though the moment they had just shared anchored them in the present. Finally, Tomás broke the silence. "I don't want this to end here," he said, his voice filled with sincerity. "I don't know how to do this right, but I want to try. With you." Monica looked at him, and for the first time in a long while she allowed herself to be completely honest. "I don't know how either," she replied softly. "But I know I don't want to feel the way I did before. If this is going to work, we need to face everything, even the painful parts." With the cold of the night enveloping them, they walked together to a nearby cafe that was still open. At a table by the window, they talked as they hadn't in years. Monica spoke of the loneliness she had felt even before their separation, the pain of losing something so important to both of them, and her constant fear of being hurt again. Tomás confessed his inability to express his emotions, his way of coping with pain through isolation, and his regret for not fighting harder when there was still time. Their words weren't immediate solutions, but each one was a brick in a bridge they were trying to rebuild. For the first time, they acknowledged that they couldn't do it alone. "Maybe we should seek help," Monica suggested timidly. "Someone who can guide us to understand each other better." Tomás nodded, his gaze fixed on hers. "If that's what it takes, I'm willing." They decided to take things slowly, knowing it wouldn't be easy. They set small goals, taking walks together, sharing stories from their day, and most importantly, listening without judgment. Monica found solace in her paintings, this time inviting Tomás to be part of the process, while he, for the first time, allowed himself to be vulnerable, sharing with her the sketches he had kept. The process was not linear. There were moments when the past resurfaced, but this time, instead of ignoring it, they faced it together. Each small step forward, each honest conversation, felt like a victory. The home they had seen in the fireworks wasn't something that existed yet, but it was beginning to take shape. Not in a physical space, but in the bond they were rebuilding step by step. That night wasn't an ending, it was a beginning. Monica and Tomás had decided not to forget what had separated them, but to learn from it to build something stronger and more genuine. As they left the cafe, the cold, early morning air made them huddle closer, sharing the warmth of each other. Monica turned to him and with a soft smile said, "It might not be easy, but for the first time in a long while, I have hope." Tomás looked at her and nodded. "Me too. And this time, I'm not letting go." With the arrival of spring, the small town began to sense something different. Preparations for the next fireworks spectacle, still months away, were surrounded by unusual excitement. It was said that the previous year's display had left a particular energy in the air, as if the projected stars had sown a seed of hope in every corner. Meanwhile, Monica and Tomás continued building their relationship with care and dedication. Their days were filled with small gestures that, while simple, meant a lot. A cup of coffee left on the table for the other, a note of encouragement on the refrigerator door, or simply sitting together at the end of the day, sharing silences that were no longer uncomfortable but mutual. Monica had transformed her studio into a space where Tomás also had a place. He had begun repairing an old easel she had planned to discard, and together they decided it would symbolize their new chapter. "It's not perfect, but it has history," he said, bringing a smile to Monica's face. For his part, Tomás dared to explore new ways of connecting with his emotions. One rainy afternoon, he showed Monica a notebook where he had started writing fragments of memories, thoughts, and feelings. She, surprised, found in those words a man who was learning to be vulnerable and authentic. The town, unaware of the details of their story, began to notice the change. Neighbors who knew them commented that there was something different about them, a warm energy that seemed to surround them. And not only that, it was said that the fireworks of the coming new year seemed to respond to this transformation. Some noted that the stars in the night sky shone more brightly on clear nights, as if anticipating something special. For Monica and Tomás, challenges remained part of their journey. Sometimes they argued, sometimes they doubted, but they now faced those moments with a mutual understanding that hadn't existed before. They had learned to value even the difficult times, knowing they were part of the process of growing together. One day, as they walked along the seaside promenade, Monica stopped and looked at Tomás. "Do you remember what we saw in the fireworks that night?" she asked. He nodded, a calm smile on his face. "Yes, a home full of life." "I think we're building it," she said, gently squeezing his hand. Tomás looked at her with a mix of pride and tenderness. "And this time, it will be stronger than anything we ever imagined." They stayed there, under the afternoon sun, with the sound of the waves as their background music. In that moment, they knew that, although their story was still being written, they had already found something far more valuable: the ability to face the future together. New Year's Eve arrived with an air of celebration and promise. The plaza was fuller than ever, brimming with laughter, music, and the murmurs of anticipation that floated like the steam from warm drinks. Decorative lights gleamed as if they were an extension of the stars, and the sky seemed clearer, as though it eagerly awaited its turn to tell stories through the fireworks. Monica and Tomás walked together toward the center of the plaza, where the main event was about to begin. She wore a red scarf he had given her years ago, while he held her hand with the confidence of someone who knew exactly where he wanted to be. Though the crowd surrounded them, the world seemed to narrow to just the two of them. When the lights went out and the first explosion lit up the sky, both looked upward, letting the colors and shapes fill their hearts. The projected images appeared more vivid than ever, dreams intertwined of a future filled with laughter, journeys, and a family they hadn't lost hope of building. Tomás glanced at her, and the sparkle in Monica's eyes confirmed that the moment was right. With a swift motion, he pulled a small box from his pocket. Before she could react, he knelt before her, his face illuminated by the bursts in the sky. "Monica," he said, his voice firm yet laden with emotion. "This time I want to do it better. I want to build something with you that's as strong as what we saw in the sky, something that won't break in the storms. Will you walk this path with me?" Monica gasped, bringing her hands to her mouth. Tears streamed from her eyes as she nodded repeatedly, unable to speak. Tomás opened the box, revealing a simple yet meaningful ring, 2 intertwined lines, symbolizing the lives they now shared. "Yes," she finally managed to say, her voice breaking with emotion. "Yes, Tomás, always yes." The plaza erupted into applause as the fireworks reached their climax, as if the universe itself were celebrating their decision. Monica and Tomás embraced while the sky continued to narrate dreams, this time reflecting not only what could be, but what they had already begun to build. It wasn't an end, but a beginning. Under that magical sky, they promised not just to love each other, but to grow together, facing challenges and celebrating the joys that life would bring. And in that moment, under the glow of the fireworks, they both knew they were exactly where they were meant to be, home, with each other.